Hey, good morning. How are you doing, girl? Well, it is Wednesday the 12th of September 2018. Welcome. Welcome. Thank you for spending a little time with me today. So, what's going on with me today? Well, I'm feeling a little rushed. I've had a really busy morning. It's amazing what I can pack into a morning. And it's morning time right about now. I am about to head out to work, and I wanted to create a message for you. Let's start off like we always start off, a little reading of a passage from Peaceful Living, that book by Mary McKenzie. All right, so September 12th, here we go. The shortest and surest way to live with honor in the world is to be in reality what we would appear to be. Socrates. Let me read that quote again. The shortest and surest way to live with honor in the world is to be in reality what we would appear to be. Yeah, that is a deep thought. And to me, it's about conveying who you are in an authentic way. It's about making sure that the way you appear is your reality. It's about consistency. It's about wanting to present yourself in a way that's consistent with who you are. It's about integrity. It's about expressing and saying who you are and what your intentions are in a way that accurately predicts and describes who you are in the moment. Mary McKenzie says the following words about this quote. Living authentically is the subtitle. Have you ever heard comments like these? I didn't know you were angry. Really? You were enjoying the party? The true test of living authentically is when people perceive your feelings accurately. It sounds easy, but it takes courage, honesty, and the ability to be in the present moment. It is so natural for many of us to lie about who we are and what we feel. Say that a woman you wanted to date calls you to ask you if you wanted to go skiing. You might say, "Oh, sure, I love to ski." When in reality, you gave up skiing years ago because you didn't enjoy it. You tell yourself that if she discovers you don't like skiing, she won't like you. So you lie to meet your need for acceptance and love. At the same time, you deny your need for authenticity, honesty, and fun. It is a total relief to be authentic. No more hiding out, making up excuses, or lying to people. It can feel like a weight has been lifted from your chest. Imagine just being you without worrying about how other people will receive you. And her aphorism for the day is, be aware today of opportunities to be honest with people because you desire to live authentically. What a wonderful sentiment. I think I'm going to do that. Be aware today of opportunities to be honest with people because you desire to live authentically. Yeah. What that might mean is that, occasionally you might clarify what you're feeling and thinking in the moment to another person. If you have reservations, express those reservations. If you think that perhaps someone might be mistaking your meaning or intention, describe where you think that the discrepancy exists and let them know what's really going on with you. Don't be inscrutable. A lot of people pride themselves on having a poker face, that no one can tell how they are feeling or what they are thinking because their outward expressions are so neutral, or their you know it's oddly enough that's considered a virtue in the world, particularly in the world of poker. And it's considered a virtue in other areas too. It is kind of funny how we intentionally hide how we feel and think from others. I think there's probably some social lubrication related to that. Because, sometimes when we're confronted with new ideas, we'll respond in ways that, aren't necessarily the healthiest response or the most effective response. And so we suppress those responses. And, that probably is a good idea, because I think we all sort of get sort of triggered if our first automatic, on the face of it, responses are expressed. I think human beings need time to adjust. I hear when people raise children, parents are aware of the transition times that children need in order to get from activity A to activity B, and sort of think that through. They plan that out. They have that transition time planning. All people need this transition time. It's not, and I need the transition time too. When confronted with a new idea, I need to sort of orient myself to that new perspective. I need to sort of detach from what I had been doing before and re-engage with what's coming up in the future. It's not instantaneous. And the thing is, life moves so fast. We're moving from event to event to event. It's really easy to overreact or even underreact, because things are moving so quickly. We don't have time to consider deeply our own values and needs in the moment. It's hard to access those, and it's also hard to change them when they need to be changed, when the situation changes. It occurs to me right now, there's a hurricane that is approaching the northeast coast of the United States. And what's happening is it's causing evacuations. Millions of people are evacuating right now, from the coastal areas to the inland. And imagine what that means for those million people. Essentially, they've got to take up their roots and move for 3 days, or 4 days, or longer, maybe an entire week, to another part of the country, a trip that they hadn't planned. Everyone's going to be dipping into their bank accounts to get the funds that they need to move their family and some of their most important belongings from their home to a second place, maybe 100 miles away. Think about the logistics of that. Now, the hurricane is not going to hit landfall until Friday morning, and it's just Wednesday today. So, if people left today, which is reasonable, they would still be hanging out for like a good 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, before the hurricane even strikes. And the hurricane's going to be probably lingering over land for days and days. Well, here's my point. My point is that there is this transition time. Thankfully we have satellite technology and meteorologists who have accurate predictions of future weather events. And, we can do this kind of planning and get some advance warning, 2 or 3 days, or even 4 days. Thankfully, that exists. And those million people are going to need those 2 or 3 or 4 days, because it's just, it's not possible to instantaneously pick up your life and move on to another life someplace else. And, there's a lot of logistics, and no doubt there's going to be a lot of hardship. I can imagine people are running out of their prescription medications, and they need to hit the pharmacy and get those meds updated. And, doctors are struggling to get even imagine people in hospital beds. Those people have to somehow be rounded up and trucked to hospitals 100 miles away. I mean, and imagine being sick or disabled, mentally or physically handicapped. How do you do it? And then you've got to come back, right? So the logistics of the whole affair just seem so overwhelming. And they need to be overcome. I mean, they have to be overcome, or else people risk losing their lives or injuring themselves. So, it's a real challenge. Being alive is a real challenge, and it's not easy, and it takes transition time. Transition time makes it easier. So, anyway, there was one point in here that I wanted to address. I may not be able to find it. Oh yeah, here we go. You tell yourself that if she discovers you don't like skiing, she won't like you. And so you lie to meet your need for acceptance and love. At the same time, you deny your need for authenticity, honesty, and fun. It's funny. I really like how she put that. We're always sort of exchanging one need for another. We're denying one need to get another need. It's about prioritizing our needs. I've got a whole spectrum of needs all the time. Like right now, I have a need for relaxation and comfort. And I'm denying those needs because I want to connect and enjoy this time with you. So basically, I am overriding one set of needs for another set of needs. It's very strategic. It's something I plan to do. And, we're always juggling these needs. We're saying, okay, well, I'm going to satisfy this need and deny this need. I'm exaggerating for effect. It's not that simple usually, because you're not just accepting one need and denying another. Because if you look at the situation from different perspectives, you can get shades of satisfying both needs. And denying both needs too, depending on your perspective. And that's what's so amazing about life. It's very rare that you're either ever totally supporting one need and totally denying another need. With a little thoughtfulness and a little care and a little strategy, you could meet both needs if you really desire to do that. And but it takes thought, it takes intention, it takes consciousness. It takes a lot of thoughtfulness to do something like that, and flexibility, mental flexibility, to think of the situation in the new way. Anyway, enough of that. Again, the book Peaceful Living. All right, so I was thinking about what I might do related to your interests, and I happen to know you have an interest in space, and so I picked up this book, Mars. I think you've told me in the past, Emily, that you have an interest in being an astronaut and maybe going to Mars, and I find that hope of yours so remarkable, so inspiring, and I commend you for that courage and interest. And why not examine Mars and thinking a little bit about Mars? Because that's the planet of interest at the moment. And, I don't happen to know a lot about Mars. I'm open to learning more. And these eyewitness books are so good. They've got so many good pictures and stories in them. I was thinking that one article that we could read in this book is an article called Colonizing Mars. Maybe we can look over some of the information and discuss it together and see where it takes us. How about that? All right. So I'm just going to read this passage, Colonizing Mars, and we can think a little bit about it. I might step in and provide some commentary, and we'll see how it goes. So, colonizing Mars. Once space agencies are able to land spacecraft on Mars and relaunch them safely back to Earth, the next step would be manned missions. Astronaut pioneers would set up small outposts living on supplies from Earth. They would work to build a safe planetary surface environment, as space scientists say. Colonization could follow, but permanent communities on Mars would need to be biospheres, places where plants can grow and fresh air is created. Researchers are developing large, airtight enclosures to serve as future biospheres on Mars. Some scientists go further and imagine planetary engineering to make Mars much like our Earth. Termed terraforming, this would completely change the climate so that future human generations could live and breathe on Mars. Then they would be Martians. That's right. What an amazing thing to imagine people living on Mars and then calling them Martians. I think this is very feasible. The terraforming aspect is going to be a real challenge. My understanding is that Mars doesn't really have much of an atmosphere. And what that means to me is that, atmospheres are kept in place by a protective magnetic core, a molten core which creates a magnetic field around the planet, which protects that planet from solar winds. The sun is continually throwing out material, charged particles, outward. And those charged particles just wisp by planets' atmospheres, and they sort of take those atmospheres away. And, planets lose their atmospheres because of the solar winds. And without a protective magnetic field to sort of root those charged particles away, planets lose their atmospheres. Now, Mars doesn't have much of an atmosphere. We could terraform Mars's atmosphere. Somehow, let's imagine we did that. We added a brand new atmosphere around the planet. That atmosphere would degrade over time because it would be hit by solar winds, which would blow that atmosphere away off the planet. So we need to do a slightly better job of just adding a new atmosphere to Mars. Somehow we have to reignite the molten core of the planet and get some rudimentary magnetic fields going. That sounds like a really tough problem. Maybe we could do it with nuclear technology. Maybe we could put a nuclear reactor at the center of the planet to create the heat necessary to warm its molten core. And then not only will we have to warm the molten core, we'll have to get that core rotating. And to get the entire inner core of a planet rotating is going to take huge amounts of energy. So it's commendable that people think that terraforming is going to happen. And maybe we'll figure out a way to do it. The question is, do we have enough material on the planet to get a gaseous atmosphere going? Or will we have to import gas from another source? Maybe from Earth or from asteroids or other planets. Other planets have plenty of gas. Maybe they've got nitrogen or some other inert gas, and maybe they've got oxygen. I don't know. We'll have to sort of. It's kind of funny. We'll have to get that oxygen from other planets and route it to Mars somehow, transport it. I don't know. All this is conjecture, and I'm really thinking out of the box here. Maybe I think it might be better that we just encapsulate for the foreseeable future anyway, just encapsulate everybody. With airtight enclosures. What I think is also interesting, there seems to be a leap in logic here. The first sentence says, once space agencies are able to land spacecraft on Mars and relaunch them safely back to Earth, the next step would be manned missions. Yeah, that kind of reminds me of how there's so many people interested in going to Mars. My guess is that there might be people who are interested in one-way trips to Mars. Oh, yeah. I think if you could guarantee that a person could sort of live for 20 years or so on the planet Mars and say die a natural death, I have a feeling that you could get, a number of 60-year-old scientists and engineers who would be willing to go out to Mars and basically stay there for the remainder of their lives. Just doing research and planting plants and documenting their experiences without the hope of ever coming back to Earth. I think that's a completely reasonable suggestion. So let's see, what else have they got here? It looks like they've got an illustration here that's pretty prominent. It looks like a mirror. Some light is bouncing off the mirror and down to one of the poles of Mars. I'm going to read the captions and let's see what it has to say. Mirror in orbit. Specifically designed orbiting mirrors could concentrate starlight like a magnifying glass and reflect it down to Mars. Scientists would direct the beam at any chosen spot on the planet. The intense heat would melt ice and begin the process of terraforming Mars. And this part says, giant mirrors orbiting Mars could reflect sunlight to evaporate frozen carbon dioxide on or in the ice caps. That could totally work. Yeah, I can see that totally working. And, we'd have to have an awful large mirror to have an effect. If we were to melt the ice on one of the polar ice caps, I could imagine liquid water start flowing. Probably through gravity, it would start flowing to the lowest parts of the craters. And so we basically end up filling the craters with water or a slushy substance, so we'd end up with a lot of ponding of the water and maybe some flowing. We'd create maybe rivers and streams. Now, here's the thing about Mars. I think it's pretty cold. And so a lot of that, and the thing is, at the bottom of craters, there's a chance that the bottom of any crater is a shaded area, and it would get awful cold at my guess is that the water would probably refreeze. It would refreeze. And so we'd have ice again that we would need to remelt, which would then flow and then refreeze at a lower altitude. So That's kind of interesting. And maybe the water might find its way. Maybe some of it would find its way and raise the relative humidity of the surrounding atmosphere. And then that water would get sort of blown away. The humidity would get blown to other areas, and maybe it would condense as dew on other parts of the planet. I'm really struggling to see how helpful that might be. If there's a need for the first visitors to have a source of water, that could work. The planet is cold. If the planet weren't cold, if the planet were warm, then there would be liquid water on the planet right now. Anyway, who knows? There might be warmer places on the planet. So, well, that's an interesting thing. Golly. All right. So, that was kind of interesting. So, I'm kind of interested in exploring your desire to be a space explorer. I'm kind of curious what might have motivated you to have those interests. Maybe you watched Star Trek: The Next Generation when you were growing up. Or maybe you learned about the planets in school and were sort of inspired by a teacher that you've had. I'd be curious to know about some of the roots of that interest and where you are in that interest now. Maybe you have a different desire now. Maybe you've changed your mind. Or maybe you found another interest. Maybe you're not so much interested in being an astronaut, but in helping to engineer rockets to blast astronauts off to other planets. Or an interest in rockets themselves, or maybe just exploration. Perhaps you're interested in exploring the deep sea now, or other areas on the planet that haven't been investigated. Those are also feasible options, and I'm curious about where you stand with your interests now. Now, yesterday I started a little exercise where I was exploring what I thought were some of my signature personality characteristics. And I think I'm going to continue and end on that note. Yesterday I talked about being creative and optimistic as being two dominant parts of my personality. And so I think I'll examine a third right now. And that third part is going to be patience. I think one undeniable aspect of my personality, one of my personal strengths, my superpowers, if you will, is patience. It's kind of funny. I wonder if patience can be thought of as a virtue or a vice. Sometimes I'm not so sure. Sometimes I'm not so sure it is a virtue. Though I think in general it is considered a virtue. So I think I'll go with that, at least for now. So how do I explain my amazing ability to be patient in the world? Well, I think the main way that I can explain it is that I'm just so blown away about how almost any situation could meet my needs if I gave it enough thought and consideration. And I think that is probably the root of my patience. Also, it's that creativity piece. And because, let's say I'm stopped by an obstacle in achieving my goal, I can find enjoyment in creatively finding solutions to meet my needs. And that creates patience. And anyway, so it's that, I'm basically overflowing with patience. Now, that's not to say I'm always patient all the time, but I'm patient a lot of the time. Okay, so let's see. Let me talk more about patience. You know, patience is also strongly linked to what I'd call mildness. It's kind of funny. Human beings have a lot of extremes to their personalities, and especially in their mind. You know, people's minds are uproarious and raucous, and you know, I recognize that. My mind is no different, and you know, it has taken years for me to develop self-control. Self-control is also one of my strong signature strengths. And really, it's that self-control, which is sort of restraining this raucous mind, which helps me be patient. So it's really a combination of creativity and self-discipline, which merges to create patience. And anyway, that's how I would explain this particular trait that my character has. It's a blend of other strengths that sort of result in patience. I'm not sure I've got patience sort of as a sort of an express part of my personality. I think patience might just be sort of a derivative part of my personality. Yeah. Patience is just something that happens to a person who is really creative and self-determined, or who has lots of self-control. Patience just happens that way. It's just sort of a thought, sort of a second thought, really. Yeah. But, you know, I think it is an important part of my personality. Let's see what else is it. What else is an important part? Oh, yeah. And I think this is one of the most important parts. I talked about optimism before, but I'm also quite encouraging. Being encouraging to others is also an important part of my personality. It's huge. It's something I find really easy to do, and it's not something I struggle. It's actually quite automatic. I'm basically for other people. I'm for them. That is, I really wish them well. I wish them to be happy. I wish them to be successful. And it's an earnest and sort of a sincere part of my personality. It's like, oh yeah, I really want to lift people up and assist them. And when I'm prevented or stopped short from helping a person out, usually verbally, or you know, I express my my wish for them to be happy. You know, if I'm prevented from doing that, I'm sad. I hurt a little bit. I feel over restrained, you know. I really enjoy encouraging other people to do their best and take on challenges and learn from those challenges. And, you know, it's just, I don't know, why do I do that? You know, I'm really not sure why it is, but encouraging other people is definitely a part of my personality. I want them to shine, you know, partly because I enjoy seeing them shine. It brings me pleasure. It's a significant pleasure. Anyway, I am encouraging, and being patient and being encouraging are two of my signature strengths, undoubtedly. So, I think we've covered 4 of my signature strengths: creativity, optimism, encouraging, and patient. So, I'm excited to explore more of that in the future. And, you know, I hope you're doing well. And I want you to live your amazing life and live your best self. And if there's anything that I can do to help make that manifest, let me know, communicate with me, and we'll come up with a plan and make it happen. I love you, girl. Peace.